Hello and welcome to the April 25th edition of Rant-Om Thoughts. Let's start off with a public announcement here. We all know someone who has had a very rough go of it when it comes to work, finances, relationships, or just life in general. If you know such a person, please reach out to him or her. Email this person. Contact this person through whatever social media platform you're both on. Call or text. If you feel like you have to do so, seek this person out in person. Check in on them in person. Last time I checked, in California, caring for your friend or your relative is still considered essential travel. You could be saving somebody's life. Something I've really noticed about people who are supporting the shutdown, who favor putting most of America under house arrest, these tend to be children of privilege. I'm talking upper middle class all the way up to the highest echelons of Western society. They don't care about the plight of those who are unemployed, who've had their livelihoods destroyed and won't be able to make rent or pay their bills. They don't care that there are people who are being pushed to the brink of suicide and are killing themselves. They just don't care. They have this very snooty, dismissive, let them eat cake mentality. Another thing I've noticed is that most, though not all of them, but most, tend to be politically left of center. As Frank Herbert said, scratch a liberal and you will find a closet aristocrat. A very big example of this would be Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York State. When asked about unemployed people in his state, people who were unemployed and now jobless as a result of the shutdown of the economy over there, his response was, if people want to keep working, then they should just find essential work. When asked about victims of domestic violence now being holed up with abusive husbands or abusive wives or abusive domestic partners, his response, it's not about them. You know, this is the mentality of these people, and it's disgusting. I mean, it's just what the hell is wrong with them? Okay. The protests that have sprung up across the country have been very encouraging. It has raised my morale a little, though I still don't believe we are completely out of the woods. I shot a video offering some advice to people on organizing protests, drawing from my quarter-century experience of being an activist in Central Valley politics. I will post a link to it below, though if you are a regular visitor to my channel, you may have already seen it. There are rumors that Justin Amash may finally get around to making a decision as to whether or not to run for president this year. I am an admirer of Justin Amash. I really don't have anything against him. I cheered when he voted for impeaching Donald Trump. I agree that both he and Judge Napolitano are right about abuse of power being an impeachable offense. You know, and you know, and so I agreed with them because the Constitution, the rule of law, and just basic standards of right and wrong are just, you know, they are more important than, you know, imbibing on liberal tears, which is really the true motive of you know, most Republicans and even some libertarians for opposing the impeachment. I was very happy when he bolted the Republican Party, and I had hoped that he would have declared back then. You know, from July all the way up to December of last year, I had waited and waited and waited and waited and waited for him to declare his candidacy and get his campaign started. And had he done so last year, he could have built up a campaign infrastructure. He could have secured the support of the Mises Caucus and the Pragmatic Caucus, and by now he would have had everything sewed up and ready to go. But instead, what he did was just dilly-dallied. He would put out cryptic tweets every now and then hinting at a possible run and getting people's hopes up, or he would give to reporters who would ask him about whether he was going to run or not. These coy, maybe not games, and it just, frankly, just got a little annoying. So, January, I flipped my support over to Jacob Hornberger, who actually is in the running and had already started a serious campaign effort. You know, if Justin Amash were to declare and start his campaign, I don't think he would get the Libertarian Party nomination because the grassroots wing of the party, they would just consider it an affront to them who have worked so hard for their preferred candidates to see some big name candidate just come in and say, hey, look at me, I'm a congressman who's nationally known, just give me the nomination, and that would be that. And even if he were to secure the nomination that way, he won't get that coveted 5% polling number that an alternative party candidate needs to be eligible to debate the Democrat and Republican nominees on national television. If Justin Amash were to wage a nonpartisan independent run in the vein of Ross Perot or Evan McMullin, he will probably end up on the ballot in maybe 10 states and would be lucky if he were to qualify as a write-in in 5 more states. If Justin Amash really wants to help, what he should do is dispel any notion that he's going to run for president. That way, the people who are still undecided about what they're going to do in November, because they are still holding out hope that he'll enter the fray, just make it very clear to them that he won't run. Then what he ought to do is just join the Libertarian Party, focus on his re-election effort to Congress as a Libertarian, and support whoever the Libertarian nominee will be. Ever since I became a registered voter in 1995, there was a rule that I imposed upon myself, that I would not publicly criticize a presidential candidate that I support, because I want to get my friends and my family to vote for this man, and I did not want to plant any doubts or reservations in their heads. But I'm going to break this rule once. Jacob Hornberger's criticisms of Justin Amash are rash, premature, and not fair. Justin Amash, it must be said, still is not decided whether or not he's going to run. And so going negative on him the way that Hornberger has been doing, it's just really, premature, and then there's the whole controversy over a link to a CIA page on Justin Amash's congressional webpage. And, it just, it makes Hornberger look like the guy on Facebook or Twitter who's more concerned about being more libertarian than thou, than actually advancing human liberty, and that's not a good look. It isn't. So, and really going negative on Amash right now, all that does is alienates Amash supporters whose votes Hornberger would need. Now, he needs their votes, he needs their talent, he needs their donations, because they could help him reach that 5% polling number. Then he really can go after Trump and Biden in the debates. Now, does this mean my support for Jacob Hornberger has wavered? Not at all. But I do believe that Jacob Hornberger is making a serious mistake here. Now, as those of you who've known me for a while know, I am very passionately pro-life. As you all know, it is my belief that killing preborn children is just horrifically wrong. These this belief is informed in part by my religious convictions. But even if I did grow up in a godless secular background, I think I would still be pro-life, because just instinctively I would know that killing children is wrong. And my pro-life ethic does not end with opposition to abortion. I oppose euthanasia. I oppose physician-assisted suicide. I oppose human cloning. I oppose unjust war. I oppose racism. Um, I also believe that in the absence of a living will or an advance directive, that physicians should err on the side of life. In 2009, while I was shopping around for a new church, from 2001 to 2006, I had been a member of an independent fundamental Baptist church. I left that church for reasons that are just too long to get into, but I will discuss it in comments. But I had spent the 3 years after that kind of home churching, reading devotionals, listening to Christian programming on the radio. And then I decided it was time to rejoin the body of Christ. I had missed the fellowship. So I was shopping around for churches, and there was a family that I had encountered at one of those churches who was active in local pro-life activity. And that was something that I'd been interested in a while. I mean, even though I'd already worked on other stuff, it was something that I really wanted to get into. So they pointed me to the Stanislaus County Pro-Life Committee. This is back in 2009. I would attend their meetings regularly, or as often as I could. By 2011, I was unanimously voted to the board. Over the years, I had come to know Mylinda Mason and her husband, Ron. I met their son, Matthew, a few times before he had estranged himself from the family. Now, Mylinda Mason and I would have our disagreements. Look, for instance, I was a supporter of Ron and Rand Paul. And one of the reasons why was because they were very pro-life and had done great work in service of that cause. Mylinda Mason, for reasons that made sense only to her, was actually more hostile to the Pauls than I had ever seen her be hostile to Barack Obama or the Clintons. And that was just something that never made sense to me. Another disagreement we would have was over foreign policy. I believe in armed neutrality and non-interventionism. Not interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, minding our own business, pursuing trade and commerce and honest friendship with the other countries in the world. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm a pacifist. I'm not. If we are attacked, then by all means, we should declare war, fight it, and by God, win it. But I don't believe that we should be bombing or invading countries because some, cokehead felon who happens to be sitting in the White House tells us without evidence that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction and that they're planning to use them on us, and then just expect us to take his word for it, or because Israel or Saudi Arabia tells us to. Mylinda Mason's foreign policy views are basically generic Republican. If it's a Republican waging the war, support it enthusiastically and without question or criticism. If it's a Democrat waging the war, support it conditionally to the point that it is supported by Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, or their regional no talent knockoffs. Now, we had the understanding, or at least I was led to believe we had the understanding, that we weren't going to let our disagreements come between us and our work for the pro-life cause, because that was bigger than the two of us and bigger than the candidates that we were supporting during presidential election years. And I didn't let those disagreements prevent me from supporting her school board campaign. When she ran for school board, she actually had a real platform, an actual platform of being an advocate for taxpayers and parents. Whereas most people who run for school board and sit on school board, to them, it's just a bullet point on a resume. And most of the time when they are on school board, it's mostly just making a big show of how much they care about the community with bake sales and car washes, while rubber stamping whatever Sacramento or the teachers' unions give them. And it's bipartisan. Then the campaign season for 2015, 2016 rolled around. Mylinda Mason jumped on board the Trump train, and so did her husband, who really doesn't have any opinions unless Mylinda tells him to have those opinions. Yeah, she wears the pants in that relationship. Actually, if you want to get a good idea of what kind of person Ron Mason is, watch the Eddie Murphy movie Norbert. That could very well be his biography. So, Donald Trump was running. She decided that she was going to support him, despite everything out there that's known about him. Having been a supporter of pro-abortion candidates and causes, having donated generously to them. She wouldn't even listen when I tried to explain to her that Donald Trump actually bragged about having one of his mistresses have an abort his illegitimate child on Howard Stern's show. Well, early 2016, we stopped having regular meetings. There hadn't been an actual physical quorate meeting since 2016. Even though the Facebook group was still in existence, and I still would actively post there, sharing articles that I thought were relevant and useful to the local pro-life activists who are on that group's list. After Trump's election, after Donald Trump was elected, Mylinda Mason, like a lot of the people who supported Trump, mistook Trump's war on decency, civility, and decorum for a war on political correctness, and took it as permission to be a little bit more open about certain sentiments regarding race. She started to embrace this white grievance identitarian ideology. For instance, back in 2018, Donald Trump talked about the death penalty for drug dealers. And I half-jokingly referred, and I had half-jokingly asked if this would include school principals who push Ritalin, Zoloft, and other mind-altering substances on America's kids. I had explained to one of the people who had responded that Ritalin is a Schedule II narcotic, and that it has the same classification as cocaine and morphine and amphetamines. I tried to explain to him that there are high school kids and college students who crush the stuff into powder and snort it to get high. Mylinda Mason chimed in on the on this and said something really cringeworthy that just kind of stuck with me for a while. I just pulled it up here on my Facebook. I'll read it. Yep, it was actually going on, unfortunately, in high schools in the 80s also, and it began back in the mid-70s. That is when the social engineering was big on taking out young, white, aggressive, and brilliant young men. Where did that come from? I mean, that really... Well, fast forward another year, she gets together with Don Grundmann, a perennial Senate candidate, a man that I regret to say I voted for, but that was before I knew who and what he really is. Got together with him and started something called the California Straight Pride Coalition, which used pro-family activism as a thin veil for subversive alt-right activity, and Grundmann was hoping to turn the Central Valley into a base for these operations. And they were going to have this huge rally in the fall of 2019. Well, it was met with resistance from the LBGT community. Now, even if I didn't have a lot, on my plate in late 2019, I would have stayed as far from that as possible, because there just were no good guys in this. On one side you had the Straight Pride Coalition extolling the virtues of whiteness. on on the description of their introduction page to their Facebook group. And on the other side, you had a bunch of people who are, and let's set aside how everyone feels about alternative lifestyles here. Okay, just look at it objectively. People who are soft-core authoritarians who want to use the power of the state to bully and coerce everyone else into supporting their lifestyles, and then have the gall to turn around and accuse Christians of being hypocrites and imposing their views on everyone else if they dare complain. And again, they want to bully everyone else into supporting and affirming their lifestyle. It's not about tolerance. It's about love for power. Period. And that's the right way to look at that. Making it even worse, Mylinda's adopted son, Matthew, got involved and became the face of the local opposition. Now, when the first few times I had met Matthew and seen him, I thought, wow, what an intelligent young guy. It's great that his parents are supporting and encouraging him. I wish my folks had done that for me when I was his age. And then he moved out of his parents' house. In the years since, I would hear whispers here and there of physical abuse and emotional cruelty. Now, a healthy person could overcome a dysfunctional background and become a stronger person. And Matthew's still young enough that he can do that. Unfortunately, that's the opposite of what he did. He threw the twin babies of America and Christianity out with the bathwater that was his upbringing. Became, this typical cliche soy boy SJW type who thinks everyone to the right of Pol Pot is, a Nazi, and became an atheist of the you have an imaginary friend, LOL, go kill yourself, you're stupid, LOL variety. Straight Pride tried to get a permit to speak at a park. The city denied them the permit, rolling out some little-known, seldom-used ordinance requiring them to get some kind of insurance coverage. Truth be told, I believe the city saw footage of alt-right and Antifa street battles at Berkeley, and it scared them, and they just didn't want that here in Modesto. In a twist that couldn't be imagined by even the most creative soap opera writer, Matthew's biological mother sits on Modesto's city council. Well, they got Jesse Lee Peterson involved in the event that they were trying to hold. Jesse Lee Peterson is a black minister and radio personality, basically a paid GOP hack. You know, if a Democrat is in the White House, you can count on him to be sharply critical of the Democrat administration. But if it's a Republican in the White House, you can count on guys like Jesse Lee Peterson to polish the Republican president's wingtips with his tongue. They probably paid him a very hefty speaking fee to come up here. They did secure a spot at a private venue. They lied to the proprietor of the venue. When the proprietor found out what was going on, he ended the event early, and Jesse Lee Peterson decided he was going to go to the Planned Parenthood facility, and I really don't know exactly what the exercise of what the goal of that exercise was. Was it a pro-life event? Was it a pro-family thing? Was it a Trump rally? Was it a build the wall thing? I don't know. Suffice to say, the whole thing just degenerated into a dumpster fire. It was the biggest embarrassment to Modesto since Gary Condit. Fast forward to just a few months ago, I was going to share something to the Stanislaus County pro-life group because the article had information that I thought would be useful to the local pro-life community, and I found that I wasn't in the group anymore, that I had been removed. Then I get a message from a third party that apparently there was some conflict between me and Mylinda wanted me removed from the group. No quorum meeting, no vote taken. I was out. You know, and she just went behind my back and just did that. You know, no confronting me with whatever she thought the issue was. It was just a damn dirty thing that she did. Very, very low down, dirty, rotten thing that she did. So I just left a little message on her page, 3 words, that was dirty, and then blocked her. And then using her husband's Facebook page as a sock account, tried to make it look like that it was his idea that happened. I did not buy that for 1 minute, so I blocked Norbert too. Well, I know that she and I have a lot of mutual friends and acquaintances, so I made it very clear to as many of those folks that I could that I'm not going to push them into taking sides. I'm not going to use people as pawns or proxies to attack her on my behalf. Oh, that's how she operates. I mean, there was this one time I let her trick me into posting something about someone that she should have, you know, done herself, but and I learned my lesson from that and did not do that again. But that's not how I operate. Yeah. I'm not going to be the one who's making weird personal demands of people and deciding for others who their friends, who they should be friends with or not be friends with. That's not me. Now, I'm going to take these next few minutes to address Mylinda Mason directly, because I know she has kiss-assers, sycophants, and hangers-on who will probably show this to her. So, Mylinda, if you're watching, 3 things. 1, Donald Trump isn't pro-life. Okay? He's donated to pro-abortion candidates and causes for decades before he was president. He bragged about getting one of his mistresses to abort his illegitimate child on Howard Stern's program. The audio is out there for anyone who can find it. And as president, he repeatedly signs Planned Parenthood funding into law. Knowing this and still calling him pro-life means means that you are obeying what George Orwell called the party's final, most essential command. You are rejecting the evidence of your eyes and ears. Racism, even in that mild identitarian white grievance form that you've embraced, is antithetical to the pro-life ethic. All life is sacred. Red, white, black, red, brown, and yellow. And just as a racist cannot credibly call herself pro-life, neither can a warmonger credibly call herself pro-life. You cannot call yourself a champion of the unborn while cheering the bombing, droning, gassing, strafing, and machine gunning of innocent children, born and unborn. Just because their skin is darker, just because their parents worship a different God, does not make their lives any less sacred, and it does not make them any less human. Finally, there's a story you like to tell people about your son Matthew. You like to claim that he has the problems that he has today because a man molested him. You've told me this story. You've told a lot of other people the story. When the Sacramento news stations were in town last year covering that little dumpster fire you were trying to put on with Grundman, you told them that story. Well, if this man who you claim was close to your family harmed your son, if he does exist, Why haven't you outed him? Why aren't you telling people who this man is? Why aren't you warning families in the area about him and doing what you can to prevent him from harming other boys? I'll tell you why. He doesn't exist. He isn't real. He is a figment of your imagination. You see, you're in denial that Matthew is the way he is now because you messed him up, being the overbearing, domineering mother, while your weak husband was either unable or unwilling to provide for your son the model of what a man is or ought to be, probably because he was afraid it would incur your wrath. So instead of assigning blame to some imaginary Peter-ass, look in the mirror. Point at your reflection the next time you wonder why your son grew up to become such a maladjusted, dysfunctional wreck. Like most Americans, yes, I did watch Tiger King. For those of you who haven't seen it, try to imagine a Coen Brothers movie based on a James Ellroy novel starring Rob Schneider in the role that could resurrect his career. It's yeah, it would be funny though if it wasn't a real story. I mean, people's lives did get ruined. People died, and other people are in jail, and other people got away with heinous stuff. So watching it's like a train wreck. It's on one hand you don't want to see it. On the other hand, once it's in front of you, you just can't take your eyes off of it. But I'll tell you who I feel the most sorry for in that whole story. Joe Exotic's cellmate. Poor guy has to listen to Carol effing Baskin every day, 24/7. It should probably constitute cruel and unusual punishment to stick someone in a cell with them. Maybe I should pitch an idea to Netflix about pro-life activism in Central California. A docu series about that. All right, this is Charles Bird signing off. Think while it's still legal. I'm pretty sure they banned it already in Michigan. I'll see you next time.